go. So were we able to see if folks are joining us yet?
Yes,
Yes,
our participant numbers are climbing.
They're trickling into the room. Hello, everybody. We'll just give this a few minutes to let everyone settle in, and then we'll get started. Cool. Well, I will start with the formalities, and then I think by the time we're into the thick of it, everyone should be good to go. So I will kick things off. So yeah, I'm Lisa Perpich. I'm a program officer here at Creative Saskatchewan, and I'd like to welcome you to the Creative Saskatchewan online session for Saskatchewan Galleries. Creative Saskatchewan supports creative entrepreneurs throughout the entire province of Saskatchewan in treaties 2, 4, 5, 6, 8, and 10, which encompasses the unceded territories of the Nehiyawak, Anishinaabe, Dakota, Lakota, Nakota, and Dene nations, as well as the homeland of the Métis. I am so pleased you've joined me today. For those of you who haven't yet accessed support from Creative Saskatchewan, I truly hope you learned today what you need to get the information and confidence in order to apply. And for those of you who have received funding from Creative Saskatchewan, I hope you learned something valuable as well. Today, we're going to go over the programs that we offer for Saskatchewan Galleries. We'll look at the guidelines, review the assessment criteria, and help you determine what grants are right for you and your projects. And then joining us in a bit will be my fellow Creative Saskatchewan Program Officer, Karen Jarwitz, and owner of Slate Gallery, Gina Fafard. Gina has access support from Creative Saskatchewan for various activities and projects undertaken by Slate, and I really look forward to their chat. We'll have time for questions, so if you have any, you can type them into the chat as we make our way through the session today. And just a reminder that this, none of you are on camera, but this session is being recorded today and will be shared in the future. Let's look at the grants offered by Creative Saskatchewan for Saskatchewan Galleries. We are a provincial government agency which supports Saskatchewan's creative industries and entrepreneurs with the Investment Fund, an incentive-based grant program for the production of commercially viable creative products, market access and export development opportunities, growth and innovation through research and development and market intelligence activities, and focusing on enhancing workforce development like business and export readiness and entrepreneurial skill development. The Creative Saskatchewan Investment Fund programs are available to commercially viable creative industry projects and endeavors that include music and sound recording, film and television, live performing arts and interactive digital media, craft and visual arts, and book publishing. We invest in the 7 industry associations that represent these sectors in Saskatchewan, which are SaskGalleries, Sask Music, the Saskatchewan Association of Theatre Professionals, Saskatchewan Media Production Industry Association, Sask Interactive, Saskatchewan Craft Council, and Sask Books. Together, we amplify their members' business skills and help them build extraordinary careers. And it's been an absolute pleasure to provide funding for SaskGalleries over the past 9 years and to witness all of the great events and programs that they have executed. And we're always excited to see what Kristen and everyone has planned for the future. There are a number of funding agencies in Saskatchewan and the country. The key to Creative Saskatchewan's grant program is that the project being applied for must demonstrate market potential, viability, and demand, as well as demonstrable economic benefit to Saskatchewan. The art galleries of the province are an integral part of how visual art is seen, promoted, and sold. That activity alone aligns perfectly with Creative Saskatchewan to drive and fuel the economic engine of the homegrown creative entrepreneurship, converting creativity into cash flow. So the grants offered at Creative Saskatchewan to Saskatchewan Galleries are the Market and Export Development Grant for advertising and promotion, the Market Travel Grant to attend markets and events, the Business Capacity Grant to sharpen business skills, and the Research Grant to undertake industry research. Just to kind of go over those grants. So the Business Capacity and Research Grants, those are both deadlined. They're currently closed to the craft and visual arts sector, and they're both juried programs. The Market and Export Development has two streams. The major stream is a deadline grant that currently closed, and it's a juried program. The micro stream of the Market and Export Development Grant is open, and the next and last deadline for the fiscal year is coming up February 15th. And those applications are assessed both internally and by industry experts. And then there's the Market Travel Grant. It's a continuous intake. There's no cutoff announced yet for the fiscal year, but it will be sometime before March 31st. And applications to those grants are assessed internally. So to kind of explain the timing of our programs, our fiscal year is April 1st to March 31st. Programs close at some point before March 31st and reopen in the spring. Sometime after April 1st, we'll announce when the programs reopen and what the deadline dates for the year will be. As soon as programs do reopen, applications are accepted, just as long as budgeted activities haven't occurred prior to the application being submitted. To learn a program reopening and deadline dates, we always encourage folks to subscribe to Spotlight, which is the Creative Saskatchewan newsletter. You can do that on our website and also find information about future application deadlines. And it's always encouraged not to wait. It's all about timing. But as I said, when a program opens, applications are accepted. You don't have to wait to the deadline to apply. Deadline just means that applications must be submitted before then. Generally, programs are open for weeks or months at a time. So when it's open and you have all the information you need in order to apply, we strongly hope that you do that. Give yourself plenty of time to ensure that your application is thorough and complete before you hit the submit button. Too often we've seen people wait till the last minute only to miss the deadline completely, or have their application be deemed ineligible because it was incomplete. We have an online grant management system, which I'll talk more about. So when the clock strikes 4 p.m., that's it. We have no way of accepting applications that are submitted after that. So let's start with our Business Capacity Grant. It supports projects that focus on developing business knowledge and improved efficiencies, as well as expanded workforce capacity and business skills, which result in growth, market expansion, and/or improved profitability. Examples of relevant business capacity grant projects would be workshops, seminars, or training that improves business skills for yourself, your management team, and/or your staff. Learning opportunities, including mentorships, work teams, or internships that support industry capacity and job growth in Saskatchewan. And workforce readiness through skill and business expertise development specific to the industry. The Business Capacity Grant supports % of the approved project budget to a maximum of $25,000 a fiscal year, or to a maximum of $50,000 over 24 months, depending on how long your project is running. The Research Grant, similar to the Business Capacity Grant, supports projects that focus on market research and market intelligence activities, identifying commercial opportunities and/or emerging technologies. Eligible projects and expenses for the Research Grant include production expenses related to prototypes or product not exceeding 50% of the total budget. The result of the research should be to uncover new market opportunities, whether a new geographical focus or a new demographic opportunity, and to upgrade business practices to best practices. The objective should be to use the results of the research to expand your business. The Research Grant is 50% of eligible expenses up to $25,000. And just a few examples of what galleries have done with business capacity and research grants. Susan Robertson Pottery purchased customer management software was trained in its use, vetted the existing database, and entered the information into the new software, attended the Retail Made Simple online course to gain the knowledge and skills to effectively and efficiently operate a retail store and e-commerce site. And Void Gallery undertook the development of risograph printing. So there's some examples for you. Next, we'll look at the Market and Export Development Grant, which provides support to individuals and businesses for market access and market development opportunities intended to improve visibility and generate sales. The major stream supports larger scale marketing opportunities. It's 50% of eligible expenses up to $25,000 a year or $50,000 over 2 years. Applications are assessed by a jury. Typically, results are available after 10 weeks after the deadline. The micro stream, it is for small but sharply focused and effective marketing projects, like the production of promotional videos, print and online advertising campaigns, updating your website and marketing assets, the hiring of marketing and social media experts, and working with a publicist. The micro stream is 50% of eligible expenses up to $5,000. You can get one micro marketing grant a year. The applications are assessed both internally and by industry experts against the criteria. The next and last deadline for this fiscal year is coming up February 15th, and unsuccessful applicants can reapply up to 2 times a year. So as far as what expenses you can apply for with the Market and Export Development Grants, projects that have commercial intent as their primary focus, expenses related to promotional video production. If that's incurred outside of the province of Saskatchewan, you would be asked to provide a strong rationale as to why it's happening out of province and can happen here. Travel, per diems, and accommodation expenses for Saskatchewan residents are eligible with Market and Export Development. Accommodations up to $300 a night Canadian. And just to note, activities must be in support of projects that would meet the criteria for the Creative Saskatchewan production grants. Ineligible expenses for Market and Export Development, you can apply to both grant streams for the same project. Applications cannot be submitted by a service provider, like individuals or businesses creating marketing materials for artists. Applications to attend events where the primary organizer is a Creative Saskatchewan supported industry association. Travel expenses for non-Saskatchewan residents, expenses for employees or contractors during non-travel days and non-work days. In-house fees related to social media are not eligible for the microstream grant. So that's just a brief overview of our Market and Export Development Grant. Next, we have the Market Travel Grant, which provides support to individuals and businesses to attend markets and events. So if you have an invitation by a juried process to participate in an event, you can apply. The primary purpose of the event must have commercial intent and demonstrate market potential, viability, and demand. Expenses that are eligible for market travel, travel for staff of the applicant company, expenses directly related to the project and incurred during the project term. Airfare and event registration may be booked prior to submitting your application to Creative Saskatchewan. Marketing expenses can be included for the activity being applied for, up to 10% of the total project budget. And publicist fees are eligible, but must be included in that 10% marketing cap. Mileage and per diem amounts are eligible, must be consistent with the Government of Saskatchewan rates. Fees for hired support personnel engaged solely for the purposes of the specific project are eligible. Phone expenses, accommodations up to $300 a night Canadian. Ineligible expenses for market travel would be events happening in Saskatchewan, attending conferences where you're there to learn stuff. You would look to the Business Capacity Grant Program for that. Expenses related to incomplete activity or product. You're there to promote something that is complete. Speaking engagements would be ineligible. In-house marketing expenses, any marketing expenses captured in other Creative Saskatchewan grant programs, travel for non-Saskatchewan residents, and expenses for employees or contractors during non-travel and non-work days. The market travel grant, it's 50% of eligible expenses up to $5,000. There is no deadline, but there will be one before March 31st. Applications assessed internally against the assessment criteria. So those are, in a nutshell, the grants available to Saskatchewan Galleries. When you're ready to apply, when you think you have an idea of what it is that you want to do, we recommend that you, well, first of all, you visit the website and select the investment grant program that you're looking at applying for, and read both the general and specific grant guidelines. It sounds super boring, I know, but it's really important for you to read to ensure that you and what you're doing are eligible. You'll also want to check out the assessment criteria for the grant that you're applying for. Each program has a different assessment criteria, and it's exactly the questions that you will be asked in the application and how the application will be scored by the jurors. So before you log into our online grant management system to start your application, have a look at the assessment criteria. As I said, these are the exact questions you're going to be asked, and you can kind of start wrapping your head around things and putting the pieces of your puzzle together. So taking a closer look at the assessment criteria, we'll use the market and export major stream as an example. Excuse me. So the first question, what are you marketing? 3 points. Provide a brief overview of what is being marketed and why it is commercially viable. Please note that the activity must be in support of a project that would meet the criteria for Creative Saskatchewan production grant. Who is your target audience? 5 points. Provide a description of the demographic and location of your intended audience. Next steps. Describe why undertaking this project is the next logical step for your career or business. 10 points. Description of goals. 5 points. Describe the anticipated outcomes, how the project will improve visibility and or generate sales. Project financing, also 5 points. Describe how the project will be financed and how the expected benefits will justify the requested investment amount. Provide details about those contributing to the remaining financial portion not funded by Creative Saskatchewan. Establish market reach, 3 points. What markets have you currently secured and what successes have you had there to date? What is the project plan? Now, this is really important, 16 points. Provide a detailed work plan describing the marketing tools you and your team are going to use to reach your target audience. Describe all tasks that make up the activity, the order the tasks will be undertaken, and the resources required to complete the project. The work plan should inform the timeline and budget. Who is the team? 10 points. Just describe the project team, including yourself, and their responsibilities. Include information evidencing expertise, capacity, and ability to complete the project. Be specific to the project and describe why you've assembled this team. And remember to upload their bios. And then there's the timeline. When and where will the activity take place? Provide a list of key dates with a brief description of the activity. The timeline should reflect the activities proposed in the project plan and budget. So that is the assessment criteria. When you have a fairly good idea of what you're going to be applying for, then you will create a profile on GMS or online grant management system if you haven't already done so. That's where all the applications and reporting is done, and staff is on hand to help with questions and any problems you have getting set up. It's fairly simple, but we're here if you need us. Timing, of course, is very important. Applications must be submitted to Creative Saskatchewan prior to the project beginning, but as soon as you submit your application, even though well ahead of the deadline, you can start your project. I always recommend that you download the template forms that you're going to need for your application sooner rather than later. These are the forms you're going to need to use to capture all the expenses you will be incurring, and it will give a strong sense of all the different types of activity that the grant supports. So there's the travel itinerary if you're doing any travel activity, and the budget template. So once you are in GMS, you will find at the top right-hand part of your screen the templates folder. And when you open it up, there will be a list of all the grants, and you select the grant that you need the templates for, and then you just download them. So the budget, it's a really important part of your application. Using the budget template provided is mandatory. It will capture all the expenses that you will be incurring and give you a strong sense of all the different types of activity the grant supports. So when you download that, right off the bat, you can look through, and even though our templates are flexible, you might see different line items that you didn't even think about doing, and it might give you some good ideas. So go through the budget template. And the top part is all the special instructions, like converting non-Canadian amounts into Canadian funds, removing GST because it's not an eligible expense, all that kind of thing. You'll fill out, of course, the budget column. If an activity is happening in-house, meaning that you are paying yourself to do some of it or someone in your business, those expenses would appear in the in-house column. And if any of the money is being spent in the province of Saskatchewan, you will put that amount in the Saskatchewan spend column. But everything always goes in the budget column, and then it can also go in-house and Saskatchewan spend if it meets that as well. And then there's a target start and end date for each activity. Then everything gets all tabulated up, the subtotal. If you're including 10% for marketing, you're eligible for a 15% admin fee up to $5,000. Then there's the grand total, and then 50%, which is typically what you would be requesting from Creative Saskatchewan, unless there's that cap. Then there's the project financing, which we'll get into that in a little bit, and the revenue projection. So, this is for all of our grants. Basically, you're not held to this, but it's just, ensuring that the project you're undertaking has commercial intent, and it gives you a chance to think about, well, if you undertake this activity, how is it going to benefit you and your company financially? So how will you pay for it? So you're requesting 50% of eligible expenses up to the grant's max. The other 50%, or the remaining amount, typically is funded through a personal business contribution. It can be savings or line of credit. It can be confirmed crowdfunding. It can be third-party investment from a family member, an angel investor, something like that. Another funding agency like Council Cultural Francois or the Western Economic Diversification Canada program. Just to note, though, that Creative Saskatchewan grants can be matched by funding from SaskArts or SaskCulture. Backing up the budget, this is really important. You'll need to provide vendor estimates and upload them to your application in GMS. So they would be estimates, quotes, invoices from the businesses or individuals that you're intending to hire. You can include rate cards or online screenshots if you're doing like advertising, rentals, that kind of thing. And we ask that you provide a breakdown of social media campaign expenses that lists the platform's region, target audience, and demonstrates how you're calculating the expenses that are ending up in your budget. A well-researched budget, it goes a long way. It ensures that you're requesting an accurate amount of money because no one wants to shortchange themselves or have to pay money back in the end. It demonstrates to the jury that the plan is well thought out and that you're serious about your project. Plus, it gives you peace of mind knowing that you're heading into your project knowing exactly how much everything is going to cost. Also important is timelines. So you'll look at all the activities happening in your budget and your project plan. When will it happen? Jurors tend not to like timelines that are unrealistic and not well thought out. If approved, it's how your final reporting date will be determined. So your timelines, as well as your project plan, your marketing strategy, your travel itinerary if travel is part of your grant, your team, your vendors, and your budget, they should all connect and speak to one another. It's really important that all the components of your applications are in sync. A really good tip, I believe that this came from a juror, ask a colleague or a friend to look through your budget first and then read your application, and then ask them if the two complement each other. If it leaves your reader confused and with questions, then you know you have some more blanks to fill in Another great way to get a sense of what Creative Saskatchewan grants can be used for and what's going on in the industry is to check out the recipient list. There's a couple of ways of doing this. So if you're on our web page for the grant that you're interested in applying for, let's say the Market and Expert MicroStream grant, for example, look at the menu on the right-hand side of your screen and find recipients and then click on it. And there you will see the list of everyone who has recently received support with the grant, what their project was for, and how much they successfully applied for. And once you're in there, in that window, you can see all of the grants for that particular year. You can also check out the annual reports, which include the list of grant recipients for that year. So on the very top menu of our website, click on the Discover tab and then select Annual Reports. And you can flip through the annual report. There's one for each year. It's a PDF that opens up, and flip through it and you can see all the grants for that year, who received them. It includes a description line for the project and the amount of money they got for the grant. It's really interesting, and it just gives you a sense of all the different things that can be done with a grant, which is super handy when it comes to business capacity research and market and export development. For more information about if you're looking for more information about any of our programs and you want to chat, you can just click on the About Us tab and it brings up the staff listing. Myself, Karen Jarowitz, and Andrea Martineau, we are program officers here at Creative Saskatchewan, and we're all here to help answer your questions and help you navigate your way through the process. You can also book a Zoom consultation right on our website. There's a calendar of available times, and you can book a 30-minute chat with one of us. And while you're on the website, if you haven't already done so, subscribe to the Creative Saskatchewan newsletter. As I mentioned earlier, it's called the Spotlight. It's really the quickest and easiest way for you to learn about program news, grant opening and deadline dates, and any opportunities that are happening. So yeah, basically that in a nutshell are the grant programs available to Saskatchewan galleries. We really hope you check out our programs and give us a call if you need to. So if you do have any questions about any of our programs, you can just type them into the chat and we'll get to that in a little bit. But right now it's time for our featured conversation with Program Officer Karen Jarowitz and owner of Slate Gallery, Gina Fafard, who has accessed support from Creative Saskatchewan on various projects and activities. For those of you who haven't had the pleasure of meeting Gina yet, I'll just give you a little bit of info about her. She was born in Regina and found her way back here after many years living across Canada and working as a jewelry designer. She began her studies at the Alberta College of Art and received her BFA from NSCAD University, where she studied with Pam Ritchie and Kay Sun. She apprenticed in Germany with goldsmith Sabrina Mittermeier and completed a 3-year artist in residence program at the Harbourfront Center in Toronto. She spent 5 years as an assistant to Joe Fafard in his studio. An experiment with organizing a pop-up gallery in the fall of 2012 inspired her to follow her new path and make gallery operation a full-time career. And she ended up opening Slate Gallery in 2013. She moved to an exciting new location in 2019 and has spent the last 9 years at Slate Gallery, where they have hosted between 9 and 12 exhibitions per year in-house, exhibited at art fairs, Art Toronto and Papier in Montreal. She has established a roster of over 40 artists. So Gina, thank you very much for joining us today. Welcome, and I'll hand it over to you, Karen.
Thanks very much, Lisa. Well, hello, Gina. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
So Lisa already gave this excellent bio and background. So I think probably what we should do is maybe just jump right into it, if that's okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so Gina, you've had a long-standing relationship with Creative Saskatchewan over a number of years. Slate Gallery has been applying and receiving market and export development grants from Creative Saskatchewan since almost the beginning of Creative Saskatchewan, like 2013, 2014. So can you talk us through a little bit of that history and that relationship and how that's been working with Slate Gallery?
Yeah, quite often it's actually this the same project that we've done multiple times. So we've traveled to Art Toronto, I think 6 or 7 times now. I'm not exactly sure how many anymore, but Creative Saskatchewan, I think, has helped us out in almost every one of those ventures. And we've also, in the last few years, started going to Montreal for their exhibition Papier. So we've been there, I believe, 3 times now. That's been crucial in the development of the gallery, actually. So it's been really helpful. On another occasion, we also did a grant with Creative Saskatchewan. I think it was the publication and promotion of some print materials for a couple of special exhibitions that we had here at the gallery. So we have done a few things outside of just applying for art fairs, but that is usually what we're in need of resources for. So.
Awesome. That's great. So you have applied exclusively for market and export development. Is that correct?
Until recently, and just this last fall, we got a market travel grant as well. That was for Montreal.
So I'm going to ask you some questions about market and export development, since that's the grant that you're most familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
So what has been Slate's most successful market and export development campaign? So I know you've said a lot of your applications have had to do with going to Toronto. And so would you say that that's been fairly successful for Slate? You keep going back year after year, so.
Yes, absolutely. It's hard to say that one is definitely, more successful than the others. It's been, but we've had so many successful things coming out of that experience every year. Making contacts with corporations or with institutions in Ontario or even across Canada, and really building the reputation of our artists over many years. It's actually the repetition is actually really important. I know that seems strange, but going back every year and seeing the same clients, and sometimes it'll take them a few years before we develop a relationship, and then they decide to go ahead and purchase from us. And now it's gotten to the point where we go there and there are people that are expecting to see us and are looking for us. So it's been a really important development just to keep returning every year.
Right. Well, the networking must be just absolutely incredible in terms of the opportunities of who's there and who you meet, and the exposure to potential clients and customers. I think it sounds like it's really huge, right? Like
it is. Well, we've had some really great successes. Catherine Boyer was acquired by the Art Gallery of Guelph one year when we were there, which was exciting. And then the next year, I believe it was the TD Bank that purchased her work again. One of the earliest times that we went, we ended up selling a large piece of Joe Fafard's 100 life-size horses to the Burnaby Art, or not the library. It was the library, sorry, not the art gallery that purchased that. They're connected in the same building. So yeah, there's been a lot of things like that that have really worked out well for us.
awesome. Okay, so how has Creative Saskatchewan's Market and Export Development Grant helped Slate to grow?
Mostly in the way that we don't necessarily rely on the local sales. I mean, like we do, of course, but not exclusively on that. So that's been the main reach. Sorry, I made a couple of notes here. 1 second. I think I might have answered some of those. I might have put some of my notes from this question in your last question. But yeah, it is mostly from those particular instances where our artists have gained that reputation and been acquired by large institutions. It's very helpful for them. And I think it gives them that extra bit of reputation that helps private collectors purchase their work as well.
So what kind of preparation goes into planning for a market and export campaign? So where do you start with your goals and objectives?
That's exactly where I started, is actually with what my goal is. Like, what is it that I'm looking to achieve? And I keep coming back to art fairs because that's been my experience with this, but those art fairs tend to expand your market and what we're really trying to do is create a national market for our artists, not just a provincial one. So I start there, that's my goal. And now then I look for opportunities that can then provide that service. And quite often those are the art fairs for us. But in order for, as far as like organizing for the application, I'm a very visual person. So I tend to start visualizing all the things that I have to do during the project, even if that's even just packing the truck. if I think about that and I visualize what that's going to be like and what artwork is going to go in that truck, I might actually get to a point where I realize that, you know, I don't have a large enough vehicle and I need to change that aspect of my grant application. So for me, that's how I organize, is that I have to actually see what I'm doing. But I know a lot of people have a different approach than that, but that's what works for me.
Well, it can get really expensive to be taking all that artwork to you know, to a place such as Toronto, right? It takes some time to get it shipped there and everything else. And so that's part of building that budget, right? Is to anticipate a lot of those costs. And if you're doing it for the first time versus doing it again and again, I think you develop a better sense of what needs to go and what your expenses are and things. And so you're able to.
And there's lots of different ways of doing it as well. I mean, for shipping artwork, there's art shipping companies that you can rely on. They're very professional. They're going to take care of your artwork, but there's also, you know, less expensive places. But then you have to think about your packaging in a very different way, because if you're just dealing with regular shipping companies, they don't realize what's in your crates. So you need to be extra careful. And this time, actually, my last trip to Toronto, I ended up driving the work myself. I looked at all of my expenses and decided that actually renting a vehicle and taking the road trip was the best way to do it with the artwork that I was bringing. So it does always change, even though you are applying for the same grant every year, it might not be the same budget.
So what are some of the ways that you set out to measure the success of your past market and export development campaigns?
There's a few different ways. One of them is financial, of course. If the sales at the exhibition have, you know, even just broken even, or if we've made money while we're there, then of course that's what you're looking for. But I think, I mean, the industry that we're in is to promote artists. So that's our real measure, is if we've done something that's going to, in the future, in the present or in the future, do something positive for one of our artists. That is the goal.
Thank you. I'm sure you've been asked this question a lot. How has the COVID-19 pandemic affected Slate's ability to reach new markets?
Some ways have been positive, of course. Others more challenging. We did end up going to Toronto and Montreal in person last fall. We just got lucky that there was a bit of a reprieve at the time. If there had been a surge, then they probably would have canceled or changed to an online version. So the timing worked out well for us, which is, you know, a little bit stressful, because you have to actually decide about 6 months in advance if you're going to attend one of these fairs. That's when the applications come through, and in this case, they're really protecting themselves. There's no refunds on your booth if they no longer can afford to pull back if it doesn't go through. So it was quite lucky. The year before, we weren't able to go in person, and everything was switched to online, which actually worked out not badly. I found other ways of doing the exhibition. I set up the Art Toronto booth here in the gallery. I moved my schedule around so that I had a couple of extra weeks in there, and had the show here, and just did a virtual tour, which was presented on the Art Toronto website. So I do that often now for all of my exhibitions, but that one in particular was shared through them, not through my own site.
And is the response and viewing the same, like in terms of like customers and people who are looking for art? Do you find that the digital aspect of having to take everything out of in person, does that change the traffic that you're driving to your website or to your digital strategies?
It's hard to say. I mean, I think right at the beginning, there was a surge in online viewing, but I think people are quite tired of it. I think they wouldn't want to come into the gallery as much as they can. And it's also hard to tell, like you have the stats on your website of how many people have looked at it, but you don't know how engaged they were or how much time they spent. So quite often that's just kind of a leaping off point for people to still come down to the gallery and view the artwork in person, because that's what's good for the soul.
Right. Obviously, you want to see artwork in person. You don't want to view it online as an ideal. Okay. Well, I have one last question for you, and hopefully it's a good one. What advice do you have for galleries considering application to Creative Saskatchewan's grant programs?
Well, some of it was in what Lisa said about starting early. That is so important. A lot of the information that is in that application, it might not occur to you that you're going to need that. So I would get on there as quickly as possible and go through the application process, or go through the grant application and see what it is that's required. And I usually print that off at the beginning, and then I can kind of make notes on it and see what it is that I need to do, because you do need to get all of those quotes from anyone who's offering services or helping in any way. You need to get those estimates, and you can't control how long that might take them to get that information back to you. So the sooner you start, the better. And also, this is something that it's time to get a little bit creative with. Like, if this might be something that your business doesn't have funding to do regularly, so why not think a little bit bigger than what you normally would, and see if you can find something that's gonna work for your goals and build your business. I mean, I've talked a lot about art fairs, but that might not be the thing for you. I mean, a lot of people aren't necessarily looking to promote their artists outside of the province. Maybe local is better, so it's hard to say. It's really
right. Well, we do talk a lot about with Creative Saskatchewan about in the application, talking about why it's the next logical step for your business. And so, for Slate, it sounds like market and export fills a big gap in terms of your next logical step for your business. But that may not be, for every gallery. There may be other needs there that need to be fulfilled. So thank you so much, Gina, for taking the time and for speaking with us and telling us about your experiences with Creative Saskatchewan. We're so appreciative to have you join us today and to provide some perspective on your experience as a client working with Creative Saskatchewan and the success that you've had with some of our grants. So thank you so much, and I wish you all the luck in this new year.
Well, thank you, and thanks for all the help over the years.
Thank you, Gina, and thank you, Karen. Now questions. We'll open up the floor. Just type any question you would like to ask into the chat, either about our programs. Karen or I can speak to that. If you have any questions for Gina, please do so. I'd ask Kristen or Karen, if you're able to access the chat and ask the questions. I'm unable to share my screen because I have my PowerPoint up, but yeah, if there's any questions, let's dive in.
I don't have any questions in the chat or in the Q&A right at this moment.
Okay.
So I don't know what that means. It
Well,
means we're doing such a good job of describing what we do that nobody has any questions at all.
We were just that thorough. But of course, folks can always reach out to Creative Saskatchewan. We have our contact information on our webpage. They can give us a call, send us an email, book a consult, whatever. And we would love to chat with any and all of you in the future. So I guess we will wrap things up. Thank you, Gina. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. And we hope that you have a lovely afternoon. Thanks for coming. Bye.
Take care.